The Promise Beneath the Willow. Isabella stood at the edge of the meadow, staring at the old willow tree swaying gently in the breeze. It had been over 20 years since she'd last visited this spot. The sight of it brought a flood of memories, both sweet and sorrowful. Clutched in her hand was a faded letter, the ink barely legible after all these years. It was from Samuel, the boy she'd loved when she was 17. Isabella had met Samuel on a summer evening by this very willow tree. He was adventurous and full of dreams, the kind of boy who could make the ordinary feel extraordinary. They spent countless days beneath the tree, talking about their futures. Samuel wanted to travel the world. Isabella dreamed of becoming an artist. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Samuel took her hand and said, "Let's make a pact. No matter where life takes us, we'll meet back here in 20 years. She laughed, thinking it was a whimsical idea, but the sincerity in his eyes made her agree. "Promise?" she asked. "Promise," he replied. Life, as it often does, took them on different paths. Samuel left town shortly after that summer to pursue his dream of exploring the world. Isabella stayed, focusing on her art and helping her family through tough times. They exchanged letters at first, but as the years passed, the correspondence dwindled until it stopped altogether. Isabella thought of him often, wondering if he had kept his promise to live life fully. She, too, tried to live her dreams, but responsibilities and the weight of reality often overshadowed her aspirations. She married, had children, and eventually settled into a quiet life that felt both comforting and unfulfilled. A week ago, while clearing out her late mother's belongings, Isabella found the letter. It was tucked inside a book of poetry, its edges yellowed with age. The sight of Samuel's handwriting brought tears to her eyes. In the letter he had written, "Isabella, I don't know where life will take us, but I hope you never forget the promise we made beneath the willow tree. If you ever feel lost or unsure, return there. Maybe we'll find each other again, or maybe we'll find ourselves. Forever, Samuel." The words stirred something in her, a mix of nostalgia and longing. She decided then and there to return to the meadow, even if it meant facing the past alone. The meadow was just as she remembered, though the willow tree seemed older, its branches heavier. She sat beneath it, running her fingers along the bark, tracing the initials they had carved all those years ago. A gust of wind blew through the leaves, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers. She closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. "Isabella!" Her eyes snapped open. Standing a few feet away was Samuel. His hair was streaked with grey, and there were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, but his eyes, those same earnest eyes, hadn't changed. "Samuel," she whispered, disbelief and joy colliding in her chest. He smiled, holding up a small notebook. "I almost didn't come, but I found this the other day and thought, maybe, just maybe." They spent hours beneath the tree, catching up on the years they had lost. Samuel told her about his travels, the places he had seen, and the people he had met. Isabella shared her life too, the joys and the struggles, and how she had never quite let go of her dream to paint. "You're here now," Samuel said. "Why not start again?" His words struck a chord. She realized that it wasn't too late to reclaim the part of herself she had buried. They made another pact that day to support each other in rediscovering their passions, no matter where life took them next. In the months that followed, Isabella started painting again. Her first piece was of the willow tree with two figures beneath it, their lives intertwined by fate. Samuel stayed in town, opening a small travel shop where he shared stories and photographs from his adventures. Though they couldn't change the past, they embraced the present with open hearts. The meadow became their sanctuary, a place where they could dream, reflect, and simply be. The promise beneath the willow had brought them back together, not just to reconnect with each other, but to rediscover the parts of themselves they had lost. Isabella learned that it's never too late to chase a forgotten dream, and Samuel found that sometimes the greatest journey is the one that leads you home. Together, they proved that while life may not always go as planned, it can still be beautiful, one promise at a time. Beneath, explanation, under or below something. Example, they spent countless days beneath the tree talking about their futures. Meadow, explanation, a field of grass and flowers. Example, Isabella stood at the edge of the meadow, staring at the old willow tree. Staring, explanation, looking at something for a long time without moving your eyes. Example, Isabella stood at the edge of the meadow, staring at the old willow tree. Sorrowful, explanation, full of sadness. Example, the sight of it brought a flood of memories, both sweet and sorrowful. Adventurous, explanation, liking to try new or exciting things. Example, Samuel was adventurous and full of dreams. Extraordinary, explanation, very special, better than ordinary. Example, he was the kind of boy who could make the ordinary feel extraordinary. Pact, explanation, a formal promise between two people. Example, let's make a pact. No matter where life takes us, we'll meet back here in 20 years. Overshadow, explanation, to make something seem less important or less noticeable. Example, responsibilities and the weight of reality often overshadowed her aspirations. Comforting. Explanation, making someone feel less worried or sad. Example, she settled into a quiet life that felt both comforting and unfulfilled. Unfulfilled. Explanation, not satisfied or happy because of unachieved dreams. Example, she settled into a quiet life that felt both comforting and unfulfilled. Nostalgia. Explanation, a feeling of happiness mixed with sadness when thinking about the past. Example, the word stirred something in her, a mix of nostalgia. Embrace, explanation, to accept something enthusiastically. Example, though they couldn't change the past, they embraced the present with open hearts.